Welcome to the cybersecurity evaluation tool known as CSET demonstration. And I'm Stephen Miller, and I'm a professor and the director of the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence at Eastern Mexico University in Ruidoso, New Mexico. And the purpose of this webinar is just to basically demonstrate how to use the CSET tool. I have a couple of examples here, one on SCADA companies, one that we use in our classes on Dr. No assessment. So we actually have a medical facility that we do use the CSET tool to perform a risk assessment. And this is all tied to business continuity, disaster recovery, and risk management. And then the other one is an example from the New Mexico Public Schools IT department. So I'm going to just go through this to show you a different example, and I will start with the one here at the top for the New Mexico Public Schools. So when you're doing these assessments, this is a tool, so it's not going to solve your problems. What it's going to do is you're going to sit down, it's going to help you facilitate subject matter experts, asking them certain questions to help understand where you stand as far as your security. And to start with, you can set up some parameters that will help you identify what those what the standards are that you're going to go by, and any levels of security that you want to look at. So I'll go over those in a minute. So the first part of this is just to prepare. You just have to fill out some assessment names, information. The assessment options you have is you can use the new CMC maturity model if you want to go through that. And that kind of basically gives you some explanation. You can go through the standard assessment, which is what we're going to do for this particular project. And if you have network diagrams, and they either have to be in the CSET tool format or Visio, if you have network diagrams, you can actually use a network diagram to help you assist in the risk assessment. So you can identify those, and like I said, for this particular demo, we'll use the standard. So the next thing, we go through the assessment information. So the demographics, they just kind of want some of that information, and then you can put down the what type of organization that you're doing the assessment. Does it fall under industry, federal entity, whatnot? So we're going to use federal entity on this, which includes state. And then the facilitator, so you can select a facilitator, and then you can also select the service point of contact, whoever that person is that's actually you're doing the risk assessments for. And then the next thing we do is look at what we call the security assurance level. So the security assurance level helps you determine, it really identifies how many questions are going to be asked during the assessment. And so it's important to make sure that you understand how much time you're going to need, maybe what your budget is, and that includes the time of those subject matter experts within your organization that you're going to have to answer. Those are not all IT, but for sure. In fact, there should be a certain mix of IT, whatever your business entity is, and then also some, I would say, the professionals, the support staff, and the management of the company need to be involved. You'll have to figure out who those are going to be. So you can set these the service level security levels by either low, confidential, for confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or the overall as that. You can also figure out what type of a general risk base you want. So you have a simple is just based off the NIST 60. and then the overall assessment. So remember, if I select moderate or high or very high, you're talking about a project that's going to, for the risk assessment, it's probably going to take weeks, if not maybe a month. So, and different, and maybe even more than that, based on the availability of your subject matter experts. So just keep that in mind. So we're just going to use low for this demo. Confidentiality, I'm going to just put as low. Normally that, you know, these are again, just to help get through this demo. Integrity and availability we marked as low. So then the next thing we go to is the cybersecurity standards. And so the requirements, what we've identified so far, just by answering those questions previously, we have 177 requirements and 482 questions that are going to be. So just think about that, how much time that's going to take to go through those. And then as far as your standards, they can be based on the different critical infrastructure or different types of companies or the government entities. So as I can kind of scroll down and look at these different ones. I mentioned healthcare, so you can do one on healthcare. We're going to do for the public school IT department, they're going to be using the 853, and we're going to use version 5 draft. So this is what, these are kept up to date by the by CISA and Department of Homeland Security folks. The CSET tool was originally developed by Department of Homeland Security at the Idaho labs. So anyway, and there's SCADA, as I mentioned, different types of supply chain transportation. So you pick the one you want. In this case, as I mentioned, we actually picked the draft NIST special publication 853 version 5. So then the standard questions are generated out of that, and there's a couple of ways you can look at those different questions and go through each one. So we just throw access control, and this is based off that standard as we mentioned. So this would be the questions that would be answered, questions asked, and then how they're answered. So they can be answered yes, no, not applicable, or some kind of alternative. And you can flag these. This control requires further review. So maybe in the session you have, the question really couldn't be answered to the satisfaction of the risk management team. So I'm not going to go through every one of these, but I'm just kind of showing you how that works. So this one's based off of the standards. So develop, document, disseminate. So assign organizations, define personnel and roles. So is all of this done in your organization? And then in addition to that, you can put examine the step. This is a supplemental guidance. If you need more guidance, what is it? What are they trying to get out of this? What is that standard trying to say? And I can bring that up. Here's the, so this gives you supplemental guidance of what that particular standard is. This is the exam step. So does the organization have an access control policy? Does the organization have an access control procedure? We're going to talk about those in another way to look at this in a minute. Comments, so you can add comments based off of the review. You can add other documents and artifacts. You can select references. You can put observations, and then you can put feedback. And then if it's been reviewed after the assessment, you have a review committee, then they can mark the that particular question reviewed. So again, this goes through each one of those standards, as you can see, like awareness training. And again, it's putting this questions in the form of the standard perspective. So another way to look at this is more around the questions mode. And if we go to the questions mode, it kind of looks at it from a different perspective. So if we look at access control, that same item, it says, do you have any access agreements, formal, informal? So it kind of simplifies in a way, I would say, because it's not going by the standards a lot of your maybe subject matter experts or your management folks or other technical support or staff support may not really understand all the standards, but can have a better understanding of just normal these questions based off of the a standard question mode. So again, and usually in the risk assessments we do in the classroom, we usually use the standard mode. So as you can see, this goes through all these different items that are around based off of what we selected when we said the the SOWs and whether and each one of those again this is just the general awareness training, the communication protection. It goes through all that configuration management, uh, contingency planning, continuity. So it kind of ties in business continuity, disaster recovery. It's part of your risk assessments, of course. And so again, I'm just quickly going through this incident response. So, and I'm going to go back here in a minute and go through the assessments for if we use a network diagram. But I can just quickly, I'm just going to quickly go through this and just mark a few of these so we get a understanding of the what it's going to look like when we finish one of these reviews. And so I can't go through each and every one of these. It would just take too much time. But again, we're just doing this as a quick demo. See how it goes based on that. And I'm going to skip down to collaborative. Let's see. Let's go down to maybe cryptography keys, configuration management. Okay. Change control, component inventory. Okay. Let's see what might be contingency planning. As you can see, there's quite a bit of these questions, as I mentioned, so it could take some time to get through each and every one of these. It's just, I'm picking up some of these that would have some real big flags. Just answering them no, just for the, to give you an example of what might happen. So, and then okay, I'm not going to spend any more time on this, but so then I click next, and it's going to come up with the dashboard assessment overall. So top rank categories, so plans, policies, procedures, risk management assessments, monitoring, and malware. So it will give you kind of a quick dashboard summary of what the problem is. Now, as you can see, we didn't answer any, only 3% of the or 5% of the questions. So it really takes, it's not really showing you too much. But when you get the assessment completed and you have that that dashboard, then it has these different control priorities. So it's showing the access control was unanswered. So it's giving you some information there on what was answered and not answered. See if I can scroll down here. Yeah, most of these, and it basically gives you the category and and that's most of this stuff. As I said, I didn't really have a chance to go through all of these. So this gives you a summary of the total answered, and then it also ranks the ones the risk management and assessments high because plans are high. In other words, you've got a lot of failures in that. So 25 failed activities out of what I answered there. Again, it can break it down into each one of those of what was, and it ranks those in priority. And then you can get the results by category. So there's all these different reports, high level assessment descriptions. So, and an executive summary comments can be put in there. And then this is just the overall. So you can actually set up a site summary report, a site security plan, so that you can actually put together a project plans, detailed site reports, and observation tear-out sheets. You can actually take those and assign those to different groups in the organization. This would be like the summary that it would provide for that particular executive group. And so that just gives you an example of how those things work. And so the that's kind of a quick review of the tool. I'm going to go back to preparation again, back to the beginning, and quickly just show you an example of this was a doctor's office, as I mentioned before, and we actually use using the network for this one. So it's a little bit different. Again, this is a classroom exercise. We'll try to keep it down. So this is the, we've loaded in a network for this hospital or this doctor's office. So it has a different, as you can tell, you can put medical devices in here and all of your IT devices. And you can actually draw your configuration from this tool as well. So if you have if you don't have it in a Visio format, you can put it in this format. It does take a little bit of time to get all of that tied together. One thing that it will do is help identify potential risk as far as not having firewalls in place in a certain area, and so that would that gives you some added feature that's in the system. And then if I return back to the assessment, then I can go next. And again, I've already set the. We're just using this the regular standards for this, but now we're looking at it from the diagram component questions. So that talks about access control from that perspective. And if we go down further, let's see if I can show one here. It should get into some of the, okay, has the SSID broadcast been disabled? So it gets some more, here's the component, login component defaults. So it kind of talks about those, and it'll, and then as I go on down, let me see here. Portable remote wireless. So it's picked up that type of equipment that's in there. It's going to start asking questions about those different components. So remote access control component defaults. So it's asking about those particular items, monitoring and malware items. And so as you go through this, it would, so we could actually, maybe this is a little bit faster because it's kind of a reduced, although when you get it, here's the devices information. So I'll answer a couple of these no, just so and and if you don't answer something, it'll flag that you didn't answer that particular question. I've picked a few that knows in here, so we'll see how that picks it up. And you can see there's a little bit more detail on this particular one. And, so encryption, you just say no on that one. See what happens. So let's take a little bit along, but I want to get you a picture of what it's going to look like in the reports. Gives you a better idea of those of the reports themselves. And I think that's got them all. Okay, this is a little bit better. So it does show yeses, we had 5 no's. It identifies where we have some, so we have some management practices that have some exposures. So you can kind of go through those, and then component results by category, and so one pass for access control, account management. So it goes through each one of those. Encryption. So we had a total of 2, but neither one of them passed. Here there was two passed, 2 failed. So anyway, it kind of gives you a good perspective. And then again, you can, here it is by component. So you can look at the wireless network, the database servers. So this is looking at from the network diagram perspective, as I mentioned. And then network warnings, comes up identifying what some of those, and I should go back to that one. Let me see. This is so it actually does diagnose the path identified by the components internet 1 and router 1 and person connected to one side of the external network, a firewall to filter those. And so it actually identifies, as I mentioned, there should maybe a bit of firewall in there. So it's identifying you don't have a firewall between the internet and that. And then here's some high level assessment descriptions. This is general IT assessment of the Docker nodes. And then some comments, and then you can look at the executive summary and what it is identifying. And then the site summary report. So each one of these are different reports that you can kind of look at. And I don't think you can see all of these through the this Zoom meeting. But anyway, so this is basically how it works. And again, it's a tool to help you facilitate a risk assessment. And so that's all I have on this. And I hope that this helps you understand the how to use the CSET tool. And this is associated with a presentation. And this is the demo part of that presentation. Okay, well, thank you for your participation.